Hello, everybody. Welcome. I'm Mel Hauser. I use she, they pronouns, and I'm the executive director at All Brains Belong. Welcome to Brain Club. Get us oriented to our conversation. When trust breaks down, neurodivergence in healthcare. We've been talking about trust all month, and this is the next domain. Before we get started, closed captioning is enabled. You just have to toggle it on if you'd like to use it. Depending on your version of Zoom, you might see the live transcript closed captioning icon. If not, look for the more ... and choose show subtitles. You can do the same and choose hide subtitles if you want to turn them off. If you're new to Brain Club, welcome. And if you're returning, welcome back. Brain Club is our weekly community education program for purposes of demonstrating All Brains Belong's approach to neuro-inclusive culture. It's our goal to shift broader community awareness of the topics of concern and importance to the neurodivergent community, and hopefully to promote new ways of thinking and being as we unlearn and reimagine. It's our hope that you then go off into the rest of your life and carry forth what you pick up here at Brain Club, and that's how culture change happens. While we hope that this is a place where you feel safe and supported right from your very first Brain Club, this is not a support group. It's not a place for medical or mental health advice, even though we're talking about, quote, healthcare topics tonight. It's not a place to make personalized requests or address personalized needs. It's also not a neurodivergent affinity space. This is a place where all people are welcome to come and to learn. So we invite you to listen, to learn, to observe what a neuro-inclusive space looks like, and think about what you're learning connects to your life. There is no one right way to participate. You can have your video on or off. Even if it's on, we don't expect anything of you. Please feel free to walk or move or fidget or stim or eat or take breaks or anything else that needs doing. We most of our time today will be watching a pre-recorded panel with more than 10 panelists, but we will hopefully have time for discussion at the end, in which case you can use mouth words or the chat to participate. There's no pressure to directly interact. Observation is a valid form of participation. And speaking of participation, the chat will remain open throughout our panel today. In addition to affirming all aspects of identity, this is a program where it's really oriented around the collective community coming together. And Lizzie's going to put in the chat our collective community agreement. What this will look like tonight is that we're going to watch 26 minutes and 50 seconds of a mosaic of panel interviews around our topic, and then we'll have time for questions and discussion. Oops, that is my, oh, thanks, Sierra. Got the chat box open. Speaking of the chat, one of the access needs that our staff have as facilitators of this program are that when we ask that if you're going to use the chat, that you type in the big box. Because of sometimes how fast the chat moves, when folks are using like the threads where you're replying and stuff to different people's comments, what that does is it bounces up and down and we get dizzy and we can't answer questions. We just get dysregulated. So we just ask that you type in the big box and avoid those reply threads. We appreciate that. If this is your first time at Brain Club, it's okay not to understand what's happening. Please keep coming back. It might take several times to figure it out, and we recommend observing the first time or two. Lizzie's going to put a link to frequently asked questions about some of the logistics that people wonder about at the beginning. All right, so as I mentioned, this topic of trust, a matter of trust, all month long we are exploring this topic in different domains of life. Before we get started, wanted to acknowledge and thank everyone who has supported Brain Club, especially these community panels where folks are sharing their lived expertise so that we can learn and hopefully feel less alone in the world. We compensate folks for sharing their lived expertise, and we're able to do that because of your support. So thank you so much for making that possible. All right. So trust in health. There's a lot of mistrust in healthcare. Unfortunately, many people have had experiences in the healthcare system that make them feel unsafe. And so that when, because of past experiences and culture and even energetic vibe that someone picks up when they enter a space, when someone's nervous system activates a stress response, this impacts health. It impacts not only the person's ability to access healthcare in that moment, but the big picture is that many people avoid healthcare because of negative health experiences and a lack of trust. Things we hear from patients all the time are that sometimes the communication that they receive from, I think, well-intentioned clinicians are that often there is an activating response around these kind of predictable comments, referring to something as just stress, associating a given symptom with body weight, reassuring people that their tests are normal while they continue to feel terrible, or the big picture of don't worry, as someone is actively worrying. Um, we at Brain Club, though, we think it's really important to be bridging the double empathy problem. The double empathy problem is a term coined by Dr. Damian Milton, who's a social scientist in the UK, who has found through research that when there is a mismatch of communication style and worldview, that is where miscommunication happens. And so, flipping to the other perspective, did you know that clinicians, particularly in primary care, are often forced to see patients every 10 to 15 minutes without any breaks to eat or pee or anything for 8 to 10 hours or more? And then on top of that, the expectation to respond to patient messages in between these 10 to 15-minute encounters, review labs, return phone calls. This is not sustainable. And so, what really happens is we have a healthcare system that is setting people up to fail, setting up clinicians and patients to be thwarted. Everybody's access needs, what they need for full and meaningful participation, are being thwarted, and thus sets up the context for our conversation. So we are joined by a large number of panelists tonight, ABB community members, in addition to practicing physicians. So thank you to Dr. Gabe Borzella, Sierra Miller, nurse practitioner here at All Brains Belong, Dr. Laura Lewis, Dr. Laura Black, Dr. Laura Bujold, I didn't realize everybody's name's Laura, Dr. Tim Lishnak, Singram, Zeph, Cass, Weaver Goldsmith, Anya Kalani, Steve Owens, and Lizzie Peratt, our education programs coordinator. So without any further ado, I'm going to stop share and reshare while clicking the sound button, which I never remember to do. No, that's not at all what I wanted to do. Sorry. This is, I guess, as big as I can get it. All right, here we go. Except I think I did it again where I didn't click the share sound button. No, I did. Sorry. All right, here we go.
What's normalized is the dysfunction of the system. It's like, yep, this is just the way it is. So that's what we have to do. So we're just going to keep doing it.
The system just doesn't listen to the people. It doesn't believe them.
Nobody believes you. Healthcare is designed for you show up and they send you places and put you in little cubbies and folders.
I can just feel when I walk in, I don't know if it's a safe space for me, being neurodivergent, but I also don't know if it's a safe space because of the way that I'm going to be treated and disregarded.
It's reasonable to expect that you're going to feel safe when you go to the doctor.
People went into a provider to seek help for something going on, and they left feeling like they now had two problems. The first being the same problem they went in with to begin with, and the second being the added stress and burden of being invalidated and dismissed and gaslit and It seemed like in many ways, the healthcare experience for a lot of folks that we talked to only added to their poor health.
In a medical system that treats you like a problem and treats you like you're making stuff up.
I don't have a whole lot of really great healthcare experiences. I have medical PTSD. When I think of the healthcare experiences that I've had, a lot of them have been very challenging, particularly from communications perspectives, trying to make myself understood to the doctor and being understood.
What comes to mind is a doctor or a physician or the nurse, willing to understand that this individual is different than all the others, and how can he or she adapt to that individual needs?
Like the oblique angle is that any doctor would tell you they want to help their patient. Any doctor would tell you that. Of course, that's like why they did all this training and all the things, right? Like, so now we're saying what we found in this study is that like widespread finding of autistic patients are feeling that they are not believed, and in fact the best way to support help is to believe the patient. It's not controversial. It's not controversial at all. It's not taking a stand, getting quackified. Like I don't like even the most neuronormative constructs of the healthcare system. Like nobody's gonna like argue with that we should like try to help the patients and make the patients feel good. Like patients are feeling bad. It's the opposite. It's the opposite of what you think you're doing.
I mean, we think about the history of the medical field in general, and it has often been rife with mistrust from all different kinds of populations that you hear about, and then in general from the neurodivergent population as a whole. Historically, it starts with, people of color and indigenous peoples and things of that nature, and you hear the atrocities there. But then as we grow and things modernize, then it starts becoming, okay, you're learning more about neurodivergence, but then the neurodivergent people are starting to really become the forefront and um, really starting to have those instances of mistrust, whether it's medical gaslighting, whether it's dealing with their own personal traumas whenever it comes to medical things, and like that could be anything from like family to other personal things. And yeah, it makes it very difficult, especially from coming from the traditional medical perspective, for someone in our community to be able to trust, because of just all the bad experiences that they've had.
I didn't feel confident like they got what was going on in my body. The ways that I would try to express that did not register for them as concerns, or they just do a test and it wouldn't show much in a medical sense, and that would be the end of it.
A lot of these patients, they've seen lots of clinicians. What do you think gets in the way of professionals not making those connections?
I think it's the dynamic between the provider and the patient. So the few patients that come to mind, I think there's something behavioral or mood related. And unfortunately, I think the patient is angry. What I've experienced as a barrier is a patient is angry and frustrated and fed up because they've been either obviously discriminated against, told told that they're not being taken seriously, and so they develop this defense layer. So, and that I think in some cases can also be some of the pathology.
Think about neurodivergent nervous systems, and all neurodivergent folks are a very heterogeneous group, of course, but
When I think about like even sensory processing, like the sensory systems that are either taking in more information than other people or less information than other people, an energy system, I think the neuroception system, the threat detection system, there are a lot of people who are extra sensitive to threat. And it's like acquired trauma physiology, that hypervigilance, that like looking. So if I'm someone who has hypersensitive neuroception and I enter a healthcare encounter, there's going to be something that someone's going to say or do that is I'm more likely to experience as threat because of these cues from the environment, my lived experience, the vibe.
So much of what perhaps goes on with me is the reflection of like the trauma of living in a culture that dismisses and undermines my humanity at every turn.
My nervous system is so finely tuned to stress that like it becomes not so much a choice.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I will die if I keep putting my body in this level of stress, or I have to go find another path.
Yeah.
But that's also a privilege, to be able to look for another path, you know, to have had other models.
Yeah, right. So you were saying as a young person, you were exposed to traditional Chinese medicine. So you knew that there was an alternative to a Western allopathic medical culture that did not cue safety to you.
The traditional healthcare system, we all know, is difficult and broken. But it only takes one person to really listen to you to make a difference.
I get to see people come in who haven't been able to get care anywhere else.
Even just the everyday ableism of when UVM lowered their mask mandate.
You can actually access the appointment safely, so you cannot get COVID.
That is not what's out there.
The idea that we can just say, this is my access need.
This is the only time in my life I would say that I've actually felt not only heard, but listened to, and just treated like a human.
First of all, I think you and the other clinicians, Sierra, Olivia, everybody there who is working on the medical side of the equation, affirm people's experience instead of denying people's experience, which is a novel thing, I think, with respect to healthcare. You know, I mean, and I experience it, you know, I have a very good primary care practice. And generally, I don't have too many problems, but you know, I recently had a situation where I was worried about something. I checked in and I just felt like, you know, I got kind of dismissed. And again, I think, you know, listening to people, taking their experience seriously, you know, even if it's like, well, we don't know what this is, but we affirm that you are actually experiencing the thing that you're telling us, is a novel experience for a lot of people. And again, I think that there's probably folks that have a whole lot of unlearning just to be able to metabolize, like, oh, this that was different that time. Is it going to be different next time? Oh, it was different that time too. Oh, well, gee, I wonder if it's the same the third time. Oh, wow, okay, there's a pattern here.
Yeah, we hear that a lot. There's so much trauma from the chronic invalidation and dismissal that goes on. And I think clinicians have no idea they're doing it, but they're clearly doing it. That's their default, that's their over-rehearsed neural pathways to be like, no, that's not it. No, like as opposed to like it was actually not up for debate whether or not someone's experience happened. Like it definitely happened. They told you it happened. Like we could skip that part.
Yes, and I am not in the center of the bell curve. I'm just not, and I can't live there. And Western medicine wants to put me there, and I wouldn't have survived the process. So I didn't engage, other than with like TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, really, and like herbalism for almost 30 years until very recently. So I have a very fortunate experience of working with All Brains Belong for my medical care. And I have an acupuncturist who's awesome and really informed. And
Just keeping that hope of maybe this one person will listen to me. Because if All Brains is existing and All Brains listens, then there are definitely other providers out there that will listen to you as well.
Totally. Totally. And like, I wish that it were not such a low bar. Oh man, if only I hold out hope that like I'm gonna have a healthcare provider listen to me like one day, you know, like it's all well, but it is
Yeah.
interesting. Like when I have conversations with like colleagues in the traditional system, they're like confused. They don't understand what we do and why we would do it and why why it would be necessary because like what's wrong with healthcare? They're confused that people don't feel safe going. They're shocked.
Not all our patients I would identify as being neurodivergent. They come because their needs were not met by the traditional healthcare system. That's what they have in common. That's what they all have in common. And amongst that group, the overwhelming majority of our patients have this pattern, right, of neuroimmune conditions.
What was it like for you to learn that many of your health challenges could be viewed through one unified lens?
It's been fantastic and liberating. Now it's like I'm working in partnership with my healthcare professional. We're both learning together. What's happening in me is real. It's taken seriously. I get my healthcare professional's expertise. I can go to my healthcare professional honestly and say, this is, this weird thing is happening and I don't get it. And my healthcare professional will go, that really makes sense, or let's see together how that could make sense, and we can think through together. And so now all of a sudden I have a body that's not an alien being, and that in and of itself is health producing.
Did you ever think there were people who experienced the physical things that you were experiencing all as one pattern? Like, was that a surprise?
That was a huge surprise. I mean, that, like, to find physical patterns of and that those physical patterns could make sense, and that tons of other people were experiencing them. That was just like, wow, that was mind blowing. That was
coming to ABB, where there's already such knowledge of, if you have this, the likelihood that you have something in the other constellation of the everything is connected to everything. The angle of you have a higher likelihood of having something of these other things, so let's just see what we're working with. Completely mind-blowing. What do you mean healthcare can be like this? This is the most proactive care I have ever gotten in my life.
There's just so many people who don't know about this. We have patients who they've been struggling for decades. And the pattern wasn't matched, and I blame the healthcare system for that because of the thwarting clinicians from being able to take in all this and take in anything new.
Yeah.
What do you think of that?
I mean, what I tell the residents is like sometimes you will feel like you're kind of in a checkbox world, and we need to remember to look outside of the checkbox world and look at the person sitting in front of you and get them what they need.
How do I get the care people need when it's so obvious and it's like low-hanging fruit, but insurance won't cover it, or insurance covers it and it's not available? It's like, if you want to help somebody, how about we start with the chronic conditions or prevention of the chronic conditions, or prevention of the exacerbators of the chronic conditions, but instead we're focused on the treatments. And you have to be this sick to get this treatment, but it makes no sense to wait until you get that sick.
The system, right? The system thwarts everybody.
The healthcare system is so complex, even the people in it have trouble understanding it.
And if we think about it, the healthcare system puts all the responsibility on the individual for healing and taking that first brave step of actually seeking healthcare. And what is that first brave step look like? That could be, I mean, first you have to find the phone number, right? So where are you going to find it? Are you going to Google it? Are you going to look on their website? Like just accessing that number. And then the next step is making the call. And is there going to be a menu of options where you can not make a call, like maybe send an email or a text? Probably not. So then you have to get into the right mindset of making that call. And what are you going to say? Then you have to come up with a script. I mean, it's all these tiny little steps woven together to take that first brave step.
Totally.
And it's all on you.
It's all on you, and kind of embedded in that is this narrative of like, well, if you would just do the thing, you will get better. You make the appointment, you come to the appointment, you take the medicine. It doesn't really regard the fact that healing happens in community. I mean, even in our practice, even when people, they have access to the menu and they have access to the knowledge and they have access to, all the things, the people who get better faster are the people who engage with community.
What I often see is once people feel safe and once people have been cued safety, they're able to engage in community. And that's when we really see these kind of healthcare jumps for people. We see, people come to group visits and learn from other people and have that shame reduction of, oh, it's not just me dealing with all these things. There's other people who believe me, there's other people who are like me, and get really quality medical care too.
And we are integrating that community connection into medical care, employment support, helping people arrive at a deep understanding of their access needs.
And I think, as it relates to health, it's interesting. If I rewind 3 years ago, we were at a community advisory board meeting, and I asked the group at that time, how will we know? Because I was like starting to get really interested in like impact measurement and how do we plan for being able to know that we're like actually doing something meaningful and not just like enjoying each other's company. And I asked like, how do you think we'll know whether our community has become more neuro-inclusive? And a lot of people start talking about access needs. I'll be able to discuss my access needs, wherever I go is basically the theme of it. What I'm noticing now, that was not like a target outcome of our work together in community, but it's a thing I'm noticing a lot. And I think that it is a metric of something we're doing here. Which is how many of our community members are walking out of healthcare appointments lately. And everyone's talking about it on, I walked out of the dentist, I left the eye doctor, I went to see a specialist and I got up and walked out, I yanked my kid out of school. Like, yes, I think this is part of the unlearning of like, you don't have to accept this. And I get, right, it's such a privilege to be able to have autonomy, agency, selectivity over where you get your healthcare, let alone where you send your children for school, and like all of these things. And I wonder, even so, can you still shift your lens for recognizing that something's messed up with the system and not messed up with you?
Yeah. And I think the first step is realizing you and your family or your kids, it's not anything about any of you, it's the system.
Act in this way, communicate in this way, or you will go unheard. And not everybody can make that adjustment. And so those are the people that are staying away from healthcare because it's overwhelming or confusing or uncomfortable or unsafe.
Some people are in hiding, some people do not come to the doctor. But usually they're angry, frustrated, discriminated against, fed up.
The system is so broken. Why don't people get faxes? I have no idea. But, you know, little things like that, because to be honest, I feel like I think it goes back to what you're saying, just like all the things you have to keep track of, and then you're not feeling well, and then you have to go back and forth, and then you have to go through the phone tree, and I don't like the phone trees. It's just, it doesn't work. And
Certainly not all our patients I would identify as being neurodivergent. They come because their needs were not met by the traditional healthcare system. That's what they have in common. That's what they all have in common. And amongst that group, the overwhelming majority of our patients have this pattern, right, of neuroimmune conditions. Like primary care is really hard. And
Right. Yeah.
primary care is really hard. There's so much to know. There's so much to spot. You're on the front lines, and then you have the system thwarting your ability to do what you're trying to do for your patients. You don't have full access to your cortex, and you're trying to survive. And like, it feels a lot like treading water and like trying to survive and trying to do everything you can for your patients. A lot of patients who have this constellation of intertwined conditions, they have a lot of, negative healthcare experiences. They feel that they have been invalidated, dismissed, that people didn't, they didn't get it, they didn't hear them. What do you think of that?
That's been a journey of discovery for myself in that I think as a physician, we hold ourselves to, I need to have the answer. And if I don't have the answer, that's going to be unacceptable to the patient. And working with these folks, that's not their expectation. They just want someone that will listen to them and work with them.
Goes back to that same point of being curious and the education factor, because you're taught one way, so then you stay in that system of thinking, you stay in that sort of lens, and it isn't until you try to expand your horizons to learn that you start to actually like see more of the lens. Like, and this is just coming from the thought process of you're seeing a doctor that is completely unaware. And, we talk about the idea of like ignorance and how, someone can be ignorant, but it's not intentional, but being able and being willing to say, okay, I don't know about this, but I will learn. I want to learn. Doctors like that we need more of, because then whenever they do see these patients, especially if patients know what they have, being able to tell the doctor being able to look it up, being able to help them more with their healthcare versus the ones that may have heard about it but just completely decide to ignore it, or or just completely dismiss.
The oblique angle to that I think would be a good one to wrap up on is what Zeph has in the chat right now. The best way to support my mental health and my physical health is to believe me.
Like the trauma of living in a culture that dismisses and undermines my humanity at every turn, and what your body has to do to adjust to living in a culture where that wants to throw you out. The fact that there's someone that there's a clinician who's succeeding in the culture, who has a voice in the culture, who treats me as a human being, and who takes what I'm saying seriously, actually say that they're your ally and they're going to help you to get to the bottom of what's going on in your body, and not throw you out in the way that that you expect to be thrown out. That in and of itself is the beginning of healing.
What do you say to people who don't necessarily feel safe enough to try something different, don't have to, whether that be like, trying a group medical visit, trying brain club, like trying, because you don't trust other people. Why would I want to be around other people? Other people suck. That's been my experience.
I get the terror and the pain of hope. in a medical system that treats you like a problem and treats you like you're making stuff up and treats you like, yeah, a problem instead of a person. The best I can offer for someone who has been hurt and gaslit and not believed is be brave once more. Once more. Because you will be believed at All Brains Belong. And it's like being in a completely different world.
Wow. Share screen. I want to begin just by thanking our panelists again, Dr. Gabe Warzella, Sierra Miller, Dr. Laura Lewis, Dr. Laura Black, Dr. Laura Bujold, Dr. Tim Lishnak, Sin Graham, Matthew LaFleur, Aspen Cupper, Seth, Cass, Weaver Goldsmith, Anya Kilani, Steve Owens, Lizzie Perrett, Sarah Knutson, Amy Noyes, and Linda Riddle. Thank you so much to all of our panelists for sharing your lived expertise with us and your perspectives on a really complicated issue. To me, what stands out in those stories is the idea of really zooming out and recognizing that the healthcare system, medical education, the whole thing is set up in a way that harms not only patients but clinicians. And I think that it's tempting when one is harmed by the healthcare system. It's very tempting to villainize individuals when really it's the healthcare system as the villain, and it doesn't need to be this way. I would love to hear from anyone else in the chat or out loud. What stands out to you? What are you taking away from this discussion? Amy.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I know that a lot of folks were sharing, including myself, experiences that were challenged in the traditional healthcare model. And but I think what I wanted to acknowledge is it's that physicians are coming to Brain Club over and over. We see an increased people coming who really want to learn, and that this Brain Club is about a learning environment. It's not about any one of us individually, even though sometimes we get to tell our stories. That it's really about what is happening in the world. How are we as self-advocates being able to share our experiences, and so that physicians can learn, we can learn from each other. And I'm always just so deeply appreciative of the panelists willing to do that. But also just want to say, when we're talking about hard things, when we're talking about how challenged we are, that we still also stay in the learning of it and the curiosity. And the point of it is like, how do we learn about our own access needs? How do we advocate for ourselves? How do we stand up for each other? And so I just really wanted to kind of bring that back to say how much I appreciate being here.
Thank you, Amy. And I think, like, to me, I was just doing, before Brain Club, I was doing an interview with a panelist for a few Brain Clubs from now. And we had this conversation around, like, when you decide you're going to be in community, when you decide you're going to reimagine what your interactions with other people look like, it is very hard to do that, because it's about, you get activated by something, and then we get dysregulated, we return to regulation, we get dysregulated again, we're recognizing patterns in other people of their coping mechanisms over time that have kept them safe for decades, and like all this stuff's all playing out, and you just have to sort of decide, like, Yup, I'm in it. I'm in it, and I want it to be different. I deeply need it to be different, and so I'm gonna roll with whatever happens. I think that's what neuro-inclusive community looks like. Sierra.
Yeah, I this presentation just really reiterated kind of the importance of safe healthcare experiences, because like traumatic or negative healthcare experiences have reaches and effects kind of far beyond just the one appointment that you have. It, like the president was saying, like it affects your ability to access care going forward and everything else. But I think similarly, like positive and safe healthcare experiences can have that really expansive impact, which is really cool. And I think that's what we heard a lot tonight. And for me as a provider, one thing I always take away from these types of conversations is how important it is to know if somebody I'm working with has a history of medical trauma. And, you know, if I'm working with somebody who's neurodivergent, I can mostly guarantee that that's been the case. And how important that is to know, because it's an important thing to, you know, we should be making everybody feel safe. Having extra supports and cueing safety for people who we know have had a history of being traumatized by medical systems.
Thank you, Sierra. And I think that many people in our community, right, appreciate that it's just being acknowledged that there has been harm done, and that we want to do it differently, and that we have tried to set up our environment and our routines to be supporting what any particular individual needs in order to access that healthcare. And I think that Sarah had a comment in the chat that this is reminding me of. Let me scroll up. I might not be able to find it. Oh, Sarah says, I never recognized how much the principles of universal design could improve a healthcare experience, so that you're not left as the patient feeling like there's one right way to be and you're not it. And when in community with others, such as Brain Club, it becomes clear that this is simply not true, where there's not simply one right way to be. So well said. So with that, you know, just as Sierra saying that focusing on positive healthcare experiences and what makes for those positive healthcare experiences, so it is with the workplace too. And so next week, we will be looking at trust in the workplace, and we are going to be joined by some of the leadership team, United Way of Northwest Vermont, who is one of our award winners from our Neuro-Inclusive Employer Bright Spotting program last year. We look forward to sharing that panel with you next week. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for being part of this conversation, and thank you for being part of our community. Hope you have a good week. Bye.